Hey there, listeners. Before we dive into tonight's story, drop a comment below telling us where you're tuning in from. Now, let's begin our journey into the unknown. The cold metal table bit into my palms as I leaned forward, staring at the photographs spread before me. My name is Grant Tilden, and I've spent the last 7 years of my life crossing boundaries most humans don't know exist. I work for Echo Horizon, a classified dimensional research program hidden beneath layers of government denial. These readings can't be right, I muttered, more to myself than to Director Hicks, who stood across from me with arms folded tightly across his chest. They've been verified 3 times, Grant, he replied, voice grave. Earth 217 shows 98.7% similarity to our own timeline. Technology, culture, history, almost identical. Almost. That word hung between us like a guillotine blade. I shuffled through the satellite imagery again. Cities sprawled across familiar coastlines, but something was off. Massive structures dotted the landscapes, not skyscrapers or stadiums, but monuments. Colossal stone tributes to something I couldn't yet identify. When do I leave? I asked, already knowing the answer. 2300 hours, standard observation protocol, 3 days max. I nodded, gathering the briefing materials. The transponder felt heavy in my pocket, a device no larger than a pocket watch that would bring me home if things went sideways. Grant, Director Hicks called as I reached the door. Remember Protocol 0? I paused. Protocol 0 was simple. Under no circumstances interfere with the native population. Observe only. Return with data. Always do, I replied, not turning back. The dimensional gate looked like a shimmering heat mirage stretched across an otherwise ordinary metal frame. Scientists in white coats bustled around me, attaching monitors to my chest and wrists. Vitals normal, one announced. Transponder signal strong. I stepped onto the platform, closed my eyes, and felt the familiar electric sensation wash over my skin. A moment of vertigo, like falling upward through molasses, then solid ground beneath my feet. I opened my eyes to gray skies and the smell of ozone. Earth 217 looked remarkably like home at first glance. I'd materialized in what appeared to be an abandoned industrial district, our preferred arrival point to avoid witnesses. As I oriented myself, I noticed the first anomaly. A massive crater, at least 300 yards across, scarred the Earth half a mile away. Not a meteor impact. The edges were too uniform. The center too deliberately excavated. My first day passed uneventfully as I established a base in an abandoned warehouse. Disguised in locally sourced clothing, I ventured into what my maps identified as Boston. The architecture was familiar. Colonial buildings alongside modern structures, but marred by evidence of past destruction. Repaired facades, retrofitted infrastructure. And then there were the monuments. Enormous stone and metal structures, some reaching 15 stories high. Their designs were strange. Abstract representations of human figures holding back what looked like tentacles? Mechanical limbs? I approached one in what would have been Boston common in my world. Moss crawled up its base, and the plaque was weather-worn, but still legible. To honor the fallen of the second wave, 1953, 1956. We will never surrender. The date made no sense. There was no major conflict in the 1950s in my world that matched this scale of remembrance. As I continued through the city, I noted other discrepancies. Radiation detection stations at major intersections. Air quality monitors everywhere. People wearing medical alert bracelets displaying what appeared to be immunity status. They looked like us, dressed like us, spoke English like us, but carried themselves differently. Watchful. Prepared. Every person I passed seemed to be scanning the skies periodically. An unconscious habit born of something I couldn't comprehend. On my second day, I found the school. It was partially rebuilt, with newer materials patching what must have been significant damage. Inside, through a window, I could see children gathered around a teacher. On the walls hung educational posters similar to those in any American classroom, but one stopped me cold. It showed a tripod-like machine towering over a cityscape. Heat rays emanated from devices on its head. Below, in bold letters, "Remember the invasion. Remember the heat rays. Stay vigilant." My blood turned to ice as recognition dawned. The image was straight from H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds, a 19th century science fiction novel in my world. Here, it was history. I stumbled back, nearly colliding with a passing woman. "Sorry," I mumbled, steadying myself. She looked at me strangely. "You okay, mister? You look like you've seen a keeper." "A what?" Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Where you from? Underground Boston?" "Just passing through," I said, forcing a smile. "Haven't slept much." She nodded, though suspicion lingered in her gaze. "Well, curfew's in 3 hours. Better find shelter before the patrol comes through." As she walked away, I noticed a small device on her wrist. Not a watch, but something that pulsed with a faint blue light. Back at my temporary base, I frantically reviewed the materials I had on this world. How had I missed this? An alien invasion that had apparently decimated this Earth's population and reshaped their entire civilization. I needed to report back immediately. If this world had experienced actual contact with hostile extraterrestrials, the scientific value was incalculable. I reached for my transponder and found an empty pocket. Panic surged through me as I searched my belongings. Nothing. It must have fallen during my exploration. Without it, I had no way to communicate with my team, no way to return home. A sound outside interrupted my search, a mechanical whirring I hadn't heard before. I peered through the dusty window and saw it, a hovering machine, perhaps 10 feet in diameter, floating 20 feet above the street. It resembled the bottom half of the tripods from the poster, but without legs. A red scanner swept the ground beneath it. As I watched, transfixed, the machine suddenly paused. Its scanner beam changed from red to brilliant white, and it swiveled directly toward my window. A metallic voice boomed through the air. "Anomaly detected. Dimensional variance identified." They knew what I was. Somehow, they knew. The machine descended rapidly as I backed away from the window. My mind raced through options. None good. I had no weapons, no extraction plan without my transponder. The wall behind me exploded inward in a shower of brick and dust. Through the haze, I saw 3 figures enter. Human figures wearing sleek armor and carrying weapons I didn't recognize. "Don't move," ordered the lead figure, a woman whose helmet retracted to reveal a scarred face with intense eyes. "By authority of the Earth Defense Force, you're being detained for questioning." Her name tag read, "Lieutenant Sarah Daniels." I raised my hands slowly. "You don't understand. I'm not your enemy." "That's not for me to decide," she replied coldly. "The Keepers registered dimensional energy matching their own arrival signature. Either you're with them, or you're something new. Either way," she raised her weapon, "you're coming with us." The last thing I remember was a flash of blue light, then darkness. When I woke, I was in a sterile white room, strapped to a chair. A single mirror dominated one wall. Observation room, obviously. Across from me sat a man in a gray uniform adorned with medals I didn't recognize. His weathered face spoke of battles and hardship I could only imagine. "My name is Commander William Shaw," he said, studying me intently. "And you're going to tell me exactly how you got here and what you know about the Martians." I swallowed hard. Protocol Zero was already shattered. And without my transponder, I was stranded in a world where aliens weren't science fiction. They were humanity's overlords. And now, somehow, they knew others like me existed. "You need to listen to me," I started, leaning forward against my restraints. "Your world is in danger, but not from me. From them. Because if they've detected dimensional travel..." Connor's expression darkened. "Then what? Then they're trying to find a way to cross over. To my world. A world that has no idea they exist. No defenses against them." I met his gaze steadily. A world of 8 billion people, ripe for conquest. The silence that followed was deafening. Then, almost imperceptibly, Shaw nodded. "Then God help us all," he whispered. The interrogation room felt colder by the minute. Commander Shaw's weathered face remained impassive as I explained dimensional translocation theory, parallel Earths, and my mission. I left out certain details, like the exact location of Echo Horizon's facility, but gave him enough to establish credibility. So, in your world, Shaw said slowly, our reality is just fiction? A novel written over a century ago? H.G. Wells published The War of the Worlds in 1898, I confirmed. It's considered a classic. There have been radio dramas, films, entertainment, he spat the word. Our genocide was your entertainment. I winced. I know how it sounds. No, you don't. Shaw abruptly stood, his chair screeching against the floor. He rolled up his sleeve, revealing an arm covered in burn scars. My parents died in the Boston heat ray massacre. I was 7. He pointed to the observation window. Lieutenant Daniels lost her entire family in the California harvesting camps. I remained silent, acknowledging the gulf between understanding something intellectually and experiencing its horrors firsthand. Shaw pressed a button on the wall. The mirror transformed into a screen displaying a map of their world. Red zones covered nearly 40% of the continents. The Martians, we call them Keepers now, control these territories completely. Humans who enter are never seen again. He pointed to yellow regions. These are shared zones. We're allowed to live there while serving as labor for their operations. The green zones are ours, barely. Underground colonies mostly. I studied the map. The Americas showed the highest concentration of green, while Europe and Asia were predominantly red. How did you survive? In the novel, bacteria killed the invaders. Shaw's lips formed a grim line. That's what nearly happened. The first wave brought them to the brink of extinction, just as they were winning. But they adapted. Their second wave came 20 years later with biological countermeasures. By then, our defenses were stronger too. But, he gestured to the map. Not strong enough. And now there's an uneasy peace? Subjugation, not peace. We provide them resources, test subjects, labor. In exchange, they don't exterminate what's left of us. Shaw's gaze hardened. Now they're interested in dimensional travel. Why? I explained the transponder, how it created a temporary bridge between dimensions that allowed single-person crossing. If they've detected the energy signature, they might be trying to replicate it. To invade your Earth, Shaw concluded. A world with no defenses against their technology, no experience with their tactics. I felt nauseated just thinking about it. 8 billion people who would consider tripods and heat rays the stuff of science fiction. Shaw studied me for a long moment. If what you're saying is true, I need to bring you to the council. But first, prove it. Tell me something from your world that would be different here. Something I can verify. I thought carefully. The President of the United States in my world is Eliza Barrett, first female president elected last year. I named her cabinet members, current world leaders, recent major events. Shaw made notes, then left. I sat alone for nearly an hour before the door opened again. Your world sounds nice, he said flatly. Our last election was in 2001. The Keepers arrived 6 months later. My stomach dropped. So much lost potential. An entire world stunted by invasion. I believe you, Shaw continued. And that means we have a serious problem. Follow me. The underground complex was more extensive than I'd imagined. We descended in an elevator that felt like it dropped at least 20 stories. When the doors opened, I walked into an underground city. Thousands of people moved through wide tunnels illuminated by artificial sunlight panels. Shops, homes, and public spaces were carved directly into bedrock. Welcome to Sanctuary Boston, Shaw said without pride. Home to 60,000 survivors. There are similar colonies beneath major cities across the green zones. As we walked, people stared at me, at my clean clothes, my healthy complexion. I was clearly an outsider. Shaw led me to a sealed chamber where a group of serious-faced individuals waited around a conference table. Lieutenant Daniels stood among them. This is the Dimensional Traveler, Shaw announced. Grant Tilden. What he knows changes everything. For the next hour, I explained dimensional theory again, answered questions about my world, and described the transponder. I drew diagrams of its components and operation. Dr. Morgan Mitchell, their chief scientist, studied my drawings with mounting excitement. This isn't far from what we've been developing ourselves. The Keeper's technology has given us insights into manipulating space-time. You've reverse-engineered their tech? I asked, impressed. When we can, she replied. Most of it self-destructs if tampered with. But we've made progress. Which brings us to our current crisis, said an older man at the head of the table. His nameplate read, General Alexander Reed. 3 days ago, our surveillance detected unusual activity at the Boston Keeper hub. Energy signatures unlike anything we've seen from them before. Reed activated a holographic display, showing a massive, dome-like structure surrounded by tripods. A pulsing blue light emanated from its center. After your arrival, the activity increased tenfold, Daniels said, her voice tight with accusation. They detected your dimensional crossing and now they're accelerating their research. My transponder, I said. If we can find it, we have it, Daniels interrupted. She placed my device on the table. It was broadcasting a signal. We contained it before the Keepers could triangulate. I reached for it, relieved, but Shaw stopped me. Not yet. We need your help first. My help? With what? Reed leaned forward. With destroying the Keeper hub before they complete their dimensional gateway. The room fell silent. I glanced around at their faces, determined, desperate, hardened by decades of resistance. I'm not a soldier, I said, and Protocol Zero means nothing now, Shaw cut in. Your presence has already influenced our world. The Keepers know about dimensional travel because of you. If they succeed in building a gateway to your Earth, Protocol Zero won't matter anyway. He was right. Echo Horizon's rules seemed pointless in the face of this threat. What exactly are you planning? I asked. Reed outlined the operation. A small team would infiltrate the hub, plant explosives at key structural points, and destroy it before the Keepers could complete their gateway. The mission would require someone who understood dimensional energy, me, to identify the critical components. It's a suicide mission, I realized aloud. We faced worse odds, Daniels said, though her expression suggested otherwise. Morgan spoke up. There's another option. All eyes turned to her. If we could access their dimensional research, we might be able to use it ourselves. Not just to stop them, but to evacuate our people. To my world? I asked, stunned. To any world without Keepers, Reed replied. An exodus. The implications were staggering. Thousands, perhaps millions of refugees flooding into my Earth. The political, social, and scientific repercussions would be enormous. It won't work, I said finally. My transponder can only transport one person at a time, and the energy requirements are immense. Even with your entire power grid, you couldn't move more than a few dozen people before the system would collapse. Their faces fell. Morgan looked particularly crushed. But, I continued, if we could reverse the polarity of their gateway, we might be able to turn it against them. Send a feedback pulse that would destroy their dimensional research, maybe even damage their network. Shaw leaned forward. Could that work? Theoretically. But I'd need access to their systems and time to work. Then that's our mission, Reed decided. A small team infiltrates the hub. Dr. Mitchell and Mr. Tilden access their dimensional technology. We plant explosives as backup. If the feedback pulse works, we use it. If not, we detonate. I nodded slowly, thinking of my family back home. My colleagues at Echo Horizon. Director Hicks would be preparing an extraction team by now, but they'd have no way of locating me without the transponder's signal. When do we leave? I asked. Dawn tomorrow, Reed replied. We'll use the subway tunnels to get within a mile of the hub, then go topside. As the meeting disbanded, Daniels approached me. For what it's worth, I don't blame you personally, but if your arrival leads to the extinction of what's left of us... She left the threat unspoken. I understand, I said. I'll do everything I can to fix this. Later, in a small quarters they'd assigned me, I examined my transponder. It was intact, but the power cell was depleted. It would need time to recharge from ambient energy, time we didn't have. A knock at my door revealed Morgan, carrying what looked like body armor. Standard issue for surface missions, she explained. It can withstand most Keeper scan frequencies and has limited heat ray resistance. She hesitated. I wanted to ask you about your world. Is it really as you described? Free? Peaceful? I thought about the conflicts and problems plaguing my Earth. They seemed trivial compared to what this world had endured. Compared to here? Yes. We have our troubles, but we're not fighting for our survival against an alien occupation. She nodded slowly, eyes distant. I was born underground. I've only been to the surface 12 times in my life, always on research missions. Always afraid. Her voice cracked slightly. Sometimes I dream about open skies, about a world where we're not hunted. I placed a hand on her shoulder, overwhelmed by the weight of her words. I can't promise you'll see that world, but I promise I'll do everything possible to save this one. Morgan smiled sadly. I believe you will. She turned to leave, then paused. There's something else you should know before tomorrow. Something about the Keepers that might help you understand what we're up against. What's that? We've captured a few over the years, dissected them. Her voice dropped to nearly a whisper. They're not what Wells described. They're not even Martians. The biological components are just hosts, puppets for something else. Something that lives inside them. I felt a chill run down my spine. What do you mean? The real intelligence. The real invader. It's not organic at all. It's some kind of electromagnetic parasite. We think that's why they want dimensional access. They're running out of hosts here. Her eyes met mine, filled with dread. They don't just want your world's resources, Grant. They want your bodies. As Morgan left, I sat heavily on my bunk, the implications sinking in. Tomorrow, we would infiltrate the heart of the Keeper operation, and I would come face to face with creatures that had conquered an entire world. I checked my transponder again. The power indicator showed 18%, not enough for a return journey. Not yet. Outside my small window, artificial daylight panels began to dim, simulating sunset for the underground colony. In the half-light, I could make out children playing in a common area. I watched them for a long time, thinking about what Morgan had said. These people had lost nearly everything, but they'd preserved something precious. Their humanity. Their hope. I couldn't let them down. As night fell in the underground city, I made a decision. Protocol Zero was already broken. I would help them destroy the Keeper Hub, and ensure that the horrors of this world never reached my own. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something. Some crucial detail from Wells's novel that might be the key to defeating the aliens once and for all. As I drifted off to sleep, my mind raced through everything I knew about the War of the Worlds, searching for a weapon I could use against an enemy that had already overcome its greatest weakness. The morning briefing was tense. 6 of us gathered around a holographic map of the Keeper Hub. Shaw, Daniels, Morgan, 2 soldiers named Sergeant David Deckard, and Corporal Mallory Burke, and myself. General Reed outlined the final plan, his voice steady, but his eyes betraying the gravity of our mission. You'll enter through the maintenance tunnels here, he indicated a narrow passage on the eastern side. Our intelligence suggests minimal Keeper presence in this section. They rely more on automated defenses than physical guards. What kind of defenses? I asked. Heat sensors, chemical detectors, possibly sonic deterrents, Morgan replied, adjusting her pack of equipment. Our suits should shield us from most of it. Reed continued. Once inside, you'll have approximately 20 minutes to reach the central chamber where they're building the dimensional gateway. Dr. Mitchell and Mr. Tilden will attempt to sabotage or reverse the technology. The rest of you will plant explosives at these structural points. He highlighted 6 locations. If Plan A fails, be prepared to evacuate and detonate remotely. What about extraction? Daniels asked. Reed's pause told us everything. The northeastern tunnel offers the best chance of retreat, but priority is mission success. We cannot allow the Keepers to establish dimensional travel capability. His gaze swept over us. Humanity is counting on you, not just here, but in Mr. Tilden's world as well. As we prepared to move out, I checked my transponder again. 34% power, still not enough. I'd need at least 75% for a stable return journey. Shaw approached, securing his weapon. Ready? As I'll ever be, I replied, trying to project confidence I didn't feel. We ascended to the surface through a series of increasingly narrow tunnels. The final hatch opened into what had once been a subway maintenance room, now dusty and abandoned. Daniels took point, her movements precise and silent as she checked for threats before motioning us forward. The Boston I emerged into barely resembled the city I knew. Buildings stood half-collapsed, streets buckled and broken. Vegetation had reclaimed much of the urban landscape, but it wasn't natural. The plants had a sickly purple-black hue and seemed to pulse slightly, as if breathing. "Keeper flora," Morgan whispered, noting my disgust. "They've been terraforming slowly, changing our atmosphere, our ecosystem." We moved swiftly through the ruins, staying close to walls and under overhangs to avoid aerial detection. Twice we froze as floating surveillance drones passed overhead, their red scanning beams sweeping the streets below. The hub loomed before us after 20 minutes of tense traversal, a massive dome structure surrounded by tripod sentinels. Up close, the machines were even more terrifying than in Wells' illustrations. 3 jointed legs supported bulbous bodies housing heat ray apparatus and what looked like biological sample collectors. They moved with unnatural fluidity, mechanical limbs bending in ways that seemed impossible. "Those aren't manned," Shaw explained, seeing my expression. "Autonomous units. The keepers themselves stay inside the hub or in their ships." "How do we get past them?" I asked. Deckard removed something from his pack, a small device with a flashing green light. "EMP grenade. Limited range, but it'll scramble their sensors long enough for us to reach the entrance." Daniels pointed to a service hatch partially hidden beneath overgrown keeper flora. "That's our way in." Deckard activated the EMP and hurled it toward the nearest cluster of tripods. The effect was immediate. The machines twitched violently, their sensor arrays going dark as they stumbled like wounded animals. "Now!" Shaw hissed, and we sprinted across the open space. Burke reached the hatch first, attaching a small device to its electronic lock. The panel sparked, and the door slid open with a hiss. We tumbled inside just as the tripods began to recover, their sensors flickering back to life. The interior of the hub was unlike anything I'd ever seen. The walls seemed almost organic, pulsing with bioluminescent light. Tubular structures ran along the ceiling, carrying what looked like liquid metal. The air felt thick, charged with static electricity that made my hair stand on end. "This way," Daniels whispered, consulting a small device that displayed heat signatures. "The central chamber should be 2 levels down." We moved cautiously through the alien corridors, our footsteps eerily silent on the spongy floor material. The structure seemed to be monitoring us. Small apertures in the walls opened as we passed, emitting brief scanning beams before closing again. "They know we're here," Morgan said tensely. "Then we move faster," Shaw replied, increasing his pace. We reached a vertical shaft with a spiraling ramp descending into darkness. As we started down, I felt a strange pressure in my head, a buzzing sensation that made it difficult to concentrate. "Do you feel that?" I asked. Morgan nodded, grimacing. "Psychic countermeasures. The Keepers use them to disorient humans. Focus on something concrete, a memory, a mathematical equation, anything." I thought of my apartment back home, the smell of coffee in the morning, my sister's laugh. The pressure receded slightly, becoming bearable. The central chamber opened before us, a vast, cathedral-like space dominated by a pulsing blue energy field suspended between massive pylons. Scientists had described theoretical dimensional gateways to me before, but seeing one nearly constructed sent chills down my spine. It was both beautiful and terrifying. "My God," breathed Morgan. "They're further along than we thought." Surrounding the gateway platform were dozens of cylindrical tanks containing murky fluid. Inside, each floated what appeared to be human bodies, their skin pale and translucent, eyes closed as if sleeping. "Hosts," Daniels spat. "They're preparing them for crossing." I tore my gaze away and focused on the control panels positioned around the gateway. The symbols and interfaces were alien, but I recognized certain energy signatures from my work at Echo Horizon. "I need access to their main systems," I told Morgan. "If we can introduce a feedback loop into the dimensional frequency, We might be able to collapse the entire gateway. She nodded. Cover us, she told the others, who took up defensive positions as she and I approached the nearest console. Morgan's fingers moved confidently over the alien interface. They based this on technology they stole from us decades ago. The underlying architecture is still recognizable. For 10 tense minutes, we worked to understand and manipulate the gateway systems. Shaw, Daniels, and the others placed their explosives at strategic points throughout the chamber, occasionally shooting nervous glances at the entrance. Got it, Morgan finally said. I've accessed the calibration protocols for the dimensional targeting system. I leaned in, studying the readouts. They've already locked onto my Earth's coordinates. They must have extracted the data from my transponder's signature. Can we reverse it? She asked. I nodded slowly. Not just reverse it. If we overload the power conduits here and here while inversing the dimensional polarity. I pointed to specific junctions on the display. We could create a cascading backlash through their entire network. It wouldn't just destroy this gateway, it would fry every connected system. Morgan's eyes widened. That could take out their entire command structure. As I began the complex sequence of adjustments, an alarm suddenly blared. Red light flooded the chamber. "We've got company!" Deckard shouted from his position. The far doorway slid open, and I got my first look at a keeper. It wasn't what I expected. Rather than the tentacled creatures from Wells's description, it resembled a tall, gaunt humanoid figure encased in gleaming metallic armor. Its head was disproportionately large, with no visible eyes, just a smooth, reflective surface where a face should be. That's not its real form, Morgan said quickly. That's just the host. The keeper raised an appendage, and energy crackled at its tip. Deckard fired first, his bullets ricocheting off the creature's armor with little effect. The keeper's response was immediate, a beam of searing light that caught Deckard in the chest, sending him flying backward. Chaos erupted. More keepers flooded the chamber. Burke and Daniels opened fire, providing cover as Shaw rushed to Deckard's side. "Keep working," Shaw shouted at us. "We'll hold them off." My fingers flew over the alien controls. Morgan at my side, translating and implementing changes as fast as I could devise them. The gateway began to fluctuate, its blue energy field turning a turbulent purple. "It's working," I said, hope rising in my chest. "The feedback is building." A scream cut through the noise of battle. Burke had fallen, a smoking hole where her abdomen should have been. Daniels was pinned down behind a console, exchanging fire with 3 advancing keepers. Shaw appeared beside us, dragging a semi-conscious Deckard. "We're out of time. How much longer?" 2 minutes, Morgan replied, not looking up from her work. "Once the cascade begins, we'll have maybe 3 minutes to clear the blast radius." "That's not enough time," Shaw said grimly. "Set the explosives for remote detonation. We're leaving now." I shook my head. "If we don't complete the feedback loop, they'll just rebuild. This is our only chance to deliver a killing blow." A keeper rounded the console, raising its weapon. Shaw intercepted it, emptying his clip into the creature's head at point-blank range. The reflective surface shattered, revealing a nest of writhing metallic tendrils beneath. The creature collapsed, the tendrils still pulsating with electrical energy. "What the hell is that?" I gasped. "The real keeper," Morgan said. "The electromagnetic parasite I told you about." As Shaw reloaded, I noticed something peculiar about the fallen keeper. The tendrils were avoiding contact with a puddle of water leaking from a damaged cooling conduit. Every time the metallic strands touched the liquid, they recoiled sharply. In that moment, a passage from Wells' novel flashed in my mind. These germs of disease have taken toll of humanity since the beginning of things, taken toll of our pre-human ancestors since life began here. By the toll of 1 billion deaths, man has bought his birthright of the earth, and it is his against all comers. "Water," I whispered, then louder. "It's the water." "What?" Shaw shouted over the gunfire. In the novel, it wasn't just any bacteria that killed the Martians. It was bacteria they had no immunity to, because Mars had no equivalent. I pointed to the recoiling tendrils. Their electromagnetic makeup, it's disrupted by ordinary water. Our world's most basic compound is toxic to them. Morgan's eyes widened in understanding. She rushed to a nearby emergency station and grabbed a fire suppression device. This system uses water, not chemical retardants. She activated it, sending a spray of water toward the advancing keepers. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Where the water contacted their armor, it seemed to short-circuit, causing spasms and system failures. The exposed tendrils of the fallen keeper shriveled and blackened upon contact. "Keep them back!" I shouted, returning to the console. "I need 30 more seconds." Shaw and Daniels seized more fire suppression devices, creating a defensive perimeter of spraying water that kept the keepers at bay. The aliens retreated from the liquid as if it were acid, their movements becoming erratic and uncoordinated. "The gateway is ready," I announced. "When I activate this sequence, we'll have exactly 2 minutes and 40 seconds before the feedback cascade reaches critical mass." "Do it," Shaw ordered. I pressed the final command. The gateway flared brilliantly, its color shifting from purple to an angry red. The entire structure began to vibrate, emitting a high-pitched whine that made my teeth ache. "Now we run," I said. Shaw hoisted Deckard over his shoulder while Morgan helped me gather our equipment. Daniels led the way, clearing our escape route with bursts of gunfire and jets of water. We retraced our steps through the hub, now filled with blaring alarms and flashing emergency lights. We emerged into daylight just as the ground beneath us began to tremble. Behind us, the hub's dome was already showing signs of structural failure, cracks spreading across its surface like spiderwebs. "The tripods!" Morgan cried out in warning. The mechanical sentinels had converged on our position, blocking our escape route. But something was wrong with them. They moved jerkily, like marionettes with tangled strings. Several collapsed entirely, their legs buckling as the feedback cascade disrupted the electromagnetic control signals. "The network is failing," Morgan realized. "It's affecting all their technology." We sprinted past the disabled machines, pushing our bodies to their limits. I checked my transponder, 68% power. Close, but not quite enough. When we reached a safe distance, Shaw stopped and turned. The hub was now engulfed in crackling energy discharges, its dome collapsing inward as the dimensional gateway imploded. The remaining tripods in the vicinity were spinning aimlessly or toppling over. "It's beautiful," Daniels whispered. Then came the explosion. Not just sound and fury, but a visible shockwave of electromagnetic energy that expanded outward in a perfect circle. It passed through us with a tingling sensation, harmless to humans, but devastating to Keeper technology. In the distance, we could see other Keeper structures failing, their lights flickering out as the cascade spread. Shaw's communication device crackled to life. General Reed's voice came through, filled with disbelief and hope. "Report! Our sensors are showing Keeper systems failing across the eastern seaboard. What's happening?" "Mission accomplished, sir," Shaw replied, his voice thick with emotion. "And more. We've found their weakness." The following days were a blur of activity. Word spread quickly among the human resistance. Water, the most abundant resource on Earth, was the Keeper's Achilles heel. Their electromagnetic parasitic nature made them vulnerable to the conductive properties of H2O, disrupting their ability to control their mechanical systems and biological hosts. Morgan theorized that the Keepers had been aware of this weakness from the beginning, which explained their extensive terraforming efforts. They were trying to gradually alter Earth's hydrosphere to make it more compatible with their physiology. Resistance cells launched coordinated attacks on Keeper installations worldwide, armed with weaponized water delivery systems. The alien occupation, seemingly invincible for decades, began to crumble with astonishing speed. On the 5th day after the hub's destruction, my transponder finally reached full power. I met with Shaw, Morgan, Daniels, and General Reed in the underground command center to say my goodbyes. "We can never repay what you've done for us," Reed said, gripping my hand firmly. "I just hope my world never has to face what yours did," I replied. Morgan hugged me tightly. "We'll rebuild. Maybe someday I'll actually see that open sky I've been dreaming about." "You will," I assured her. "Your people have survived this long. You'll thrive now." Daniels, still guarded but no longer hostile, handed me a small data drive. "Everything we know about the Keepers, their technology, their biology, their strategies, in case they ever find another way to your world." "Thank you," I said, pocketing it carefully. I'll make sure my superiors understand the threat. Shaw walked me to the surface exit, a rare privilege in their security protocols. The Boston above was still in ruins, but already I could see signs of humans reclaiming territory. Small groups worked to dismantle fallen tripods, salvaging useful components. "What will you tell your people?" Shaw asked. I considered this. The truth. That I found a world where fiction became reality, and where humanity's resilience prevailed against impossible odds. "They won't believe you," he said with a wry smile. "Probably not," I admitted. "But I'll have evidence." I patted the data drive. We reached the designated coordinates for my return jump. The same spot where I'd first arrived, now marked with a simple concrete pad. "One last thing," Shaw said, handing me a sealed container. "Water from our world. Morgan thinks there might be microscopic differences in its composition compared to yours. Specific bacteria or trace elements that proved particularly effective against the Keepers. Your scientists should analyze it, just in case." I nodded, understanding the precaution. "I will." We shook hands one final time. I stepped onto the concrete pad and activated my transponder. As the familiar electric sensation began to build around me, I took one last look at this parallel Earth, a world of devastation and hope, of horror and heroism. "Good luck, Commander Shaw," I said, as the dimensional field enveloped me. "Good luck, Mr. Tilden," he replied, offering a crisp salute. "And thank you." The world dissolved into shimmering blue light. For a timeless moment, I existed between dimensions, suspended in the void between realities. Then solid ground beneath my feet again, and the sterile white walls of Echo Horizon's retrieval chamber. Alarms blared as technicians rushed toward me. Director Hicks pushed through the crowd, his face a mask of relief and anger. "Tilden, where the hell have you been? It's been 2 weeks." I smiled weakly, exhaustion finally catching up with me. "Sir, you wouldn't believe me if I told you." "Try me," he challenged. I handed him the data drive and the sealed container of water. "We need to update our defensive protocols immediately. And sir," I met his gaze steadily, "we need to talk about the War of the Worlds. It's not just a story anymore." As medical staff led me away for examination, I thought about Shaw, Morgan, Daniels, and all the others fighting to reclaim their world. I thought about the parallel Earth where human determination had endured through decades of alien occupation and ultimately prevailed. And I thought about the thin membrane separating dimensions, how fragile it truly was. The Keeper's Gateway had been destroyed, but the knowledge of its possibility remained. Somewhere in the vast multiverse, other threats might be watching, waiting, searching for doors between worlds. But now, at least, we knew to be ready. And to keep plenty of water on hand. After all, as H.G. Wells himself wrote, "We have learned now that we cannot regard this planet as being fenced in and a secure abiding place for man. We can never anticipate the unseen good or evil that may come upon us suddenly out of space." I couldn't have said it better myself.